Hello, everybody, and welcome to Talks with Tino. Today, I have another fantastic guest. Today, I'm going to be talking to Jack. Jack is a junior doctor. Not to put pressure on Jack, but he knows. He knows, and he's going to be with me to discuss the importance of, the friends that we have in our lives, the societies that we have, the things that we do to keep a sense of community and sort of join together and have a good time. I'm going to let Jack take the mantle here, and I'm going to let him introduce himself. So, Jack, if you will.
Yeah, hi guys. As Tino said, my name's Jack. I'm also the welfare sec of CMFC, which is Cardiff Medics Football Club this year. Tino will know all about that.
You forgot to mention the best medics football team in the country. You've got just slipping that in, just in case people didn't know.
Just sprinkling that in there. Sort of three-time NAMS champions. Just if you don't know, get to know kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, of course. As Tino, as you were saying, it's been a really difficult time mentally during lockdown with so little to do. I think as students, we've definitely felt that with our university experience being quite severely impacted, I think it's fair to say, from things like courses and lectures going online, but then also the social side has been completely almost eradicated, and again, all that's gone online. You think of Zoom socials and Zoom quizzes that we've all exhausted.
Absolutely.
A very different experience.
It's been literally how you've said. I think been on only 3,457 walks. Not that anybody's counting. It gets tiresome.
Yeah, of course. And I think one of the things you mentioned there, walking, that's been massive for me. I've been around Roth Lake probably, like you say, 1,000 times. I know every inch of that path around the lake, and God, I'm on first name basis with all the bloody geese there.
No, it can get like that. I'm really happy you're here today, and let me tell you why. I'm excited, because I think you can provide them with nice bit of information, and sort of reassure people of the importance, obviously, of what we're doing. I suppose at the moment with lockdown, and also I suppose you can also expand on the importance of community and friendship, because I think being in that environment, especially as a healthcare professional, I'm sure you can see the benefits, and you've obviously seen different scales, in terms of how mental health can affect us, and how even, let's say, physical health, for example, and having COVID can then affect your mental health, because maybe you can't do certain things if you've got to isolate and things like that. I think you can probably touch base on that and just talk about how important it is to have these societies, friendships and things like that, and that's why I'm excited to have you on here, Jack. I'm excited. So I think if you could just tell us about some of the experiences that you've encountered, and
So yeah, sure. So you've touched on some really important things there, and again, thank you so much for having me. It's a really useful opportunity for me to talk about these kinds of things with the roles that I've had. So I think with the two roles that I've got at the minute, being a medical student and the welfare officer, I've seen definitely the two sides of the coin in terms of balancing mental health and physical health. I was actually at the Royal Glamorgan Hospital for my first placement this year, which was very much being part of a team kind of on the front line sort of thing. And that was during the first wave of coronavirus. So
what was that like?
I don't know if you remember on the news, but on BBC News, the Glam was one of the sort of, I think it was the second hospital to have its doors shut. So it was really swept away properly in that first wave. It was inundated with COVID patients. And I think for me, obviously that really hammered home the seriousness of the situation. Hearing about it on the news, you obviously, you know that it's fairly serious, but then when you see it sort of face to face and you can't get away from it, it's every day of your placement, you're seeing it just firsthand. Anyone who comes in with shortness of breath or a new onset cough, you're thinking this could be COVID, and this could be a life-changing experience for the patient. So I think to me that just sort of really clarified how serious a situation it was. But then obviously with the lockdown and the length of time that it's really important to sort of consider the impact on people's mental health. But the problem with that is it's such a fine balance, because to ease people's mental health, you want to let them do things they enjoy, like seeing friends, going to restaurants, cinemas, bars, whatever it might be. But at the same time, you can't release the restrictions quickly enough because of the risk to people's physical health. So with my two roles, I've been so conscious of the balance between those two things. And it's been a really difficult thing to get right. Like, I think it's been difficult for us all. So I've managed to see that firsthand, which is...
I think that's a very, very, very important point that you just touched on right now. Like, as junior doctors, how do you keep yourselves occupied? Because, you know, after a long shift, you know, I can sort of relate in terms of like the length of a shift. You know, we do 12-hour shifts. I think you do even longer, don't you? Do you do 16-hour shifts? Is that correct?
So when I qualify, you do get some 13-hour shifts, and they often overrun with little jobs. So you might end up being there slightly longer. But to be honest, as a medical student, it does tend to be sort of 9 to 5 kind of thing. So until I qualify, to be honest, I can't quite relate to the 12 hours that you do. Obviously, it becomes the norm for us both.
Oh, no, count your chickens. Absolutely. You don't want to relate to that. That's not ideal at all. It's not ideal. One thing I can tell you, after a certain amount of hours, it's just so hard to just keep the same levels of concentration and to work at that pace. So it's not something you'd want to relate to. So, yeah. But what I will say is, obviously, how do you keep yourself occupied? Because obviously you go in and obviously it's tough. You've got a lot of COVID patients. You've got, you know, a lot of things to deal with. Like, how do you keep yourself, you know, stimulated? And what have you been doing? What have you been up to?
In terms of myself, one thing that's been massive for me has been the continuation of clinical placements. Obviously, step one of that is how beneficial it is to our learning, because I'm sure you'll be able to relate to this, Tino. There's no replacement for that face-to-face clinical experience.
No, there isn't.
But secondly, during COVID, another massive benefit of that is it's given me something to do. Like, at times in previous years, like especially when you're younger and less experienced, you kind of think, oh, if I can get off placement slightly early for that football match or that social or whatever it might be.
Yeah, absolutely. I can relate.
You're running for the hills. But this time, like, obviously, as I'm coming to the end of my degree, I want to feel ready for the next step in my career, and from like a selfish point of view. Then also, it keeps you occupied. And as fatiguing as it can be if you're seeing the same sort of emotionally draining stuff day in, day out, I don't really know what I'd be doing at home. Like, there's only so much sort of Netflix and, you know, sort of TV, football you can watch, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you.
The thing that's helped me most outside of placement is maintaining a routine. So whether that be regularly exercising and just trying to keep my motivation up, even if it's just at home with like sort of a gym mat and like kind of light weights that I've just got knocking about the place, or whether it's going for a walk and just staying on top of my meals and sort of meal preps and that sort of thing. I've found that just maintaining a routine and enjoying just sort of the trivial things like going for a walk has been massive. I think one thing that's important to emphasize was COVID at its worst was incredibly dangerous, spread incredibly quickly. And as you say, the physical side effects of that can be death in age groups you never expect it. And in people who have no comorbidities or no other sort of conditions that would affect their health. And then even the people who recover, like you hear of people who they haven't got their smell back 6 months later. They haven't been able to go for a jog since they've recovered. Do you know what I mean? Like, these are kind of life-changing consequences that you don't really think about. But I think the difference now is, as the numbers are coming down and down and down and down, I think it's been about sort of 250 cases per day in the UK now, and around 50 deaths per day. So that's still a really significant number, and obviously nothing to be sniffed at. But compared to when the death rates were in the thousands per day, obviously that's much better. But if you think of 50 people just day in, day out, losing their lives still because of COVID, I think it really hammers home how serious it still is. Still encourage people to try and remain as vigilant as you can, just because the numbers are coming down. Like, let's keep them coming down. Let's get them as low as we can. Like, let's have below 100 cases a day in the UK before we start opening things up, because I'm very much sort of team slow and steady, because we've seen what's happened when the government have released sort of restrictions.
And then we had to go to another lockdown, absolutely.
Another lockdown. And I think I speak for everyone when I say nobody wants another lockdown. Nobody wants this to continue for another year maybe. So let's just stay vigilant and get these cases right down. Like, people would much prefer 1 month of maybe more difficult lockdown than, say, open everything now, and then in 2 months' time, the cases are back up, there's thousands of deaths, and we're kind of locked back inside for another extended period of time. I think that's a trade-off that a lot of people would take, if you know what I mean.
I think it's nice hearing it from someone that you can relate to. I think with information, it's hard to watch TV and listen to politicians and, you know, people in suits saying all this, that, and the other, because it just, I mean, in some cases it goes into one ear, comes out the other. But if you listen to it from someone who's experienced it, somebody who's in that position, someone you can relate to, that's going through what you're going through, then I think it makes you appreciate it so much more. So I really appreciate you sort of like explaining that, because I think that's what people need to hear, or, you know, want to hear. You know, they want to hear that the cases are going down. It's going to end so soon. Life's going to be so much better so soon. The sun coming out. But we have to obviously maintain that vigilance in the back of our head so that it continuously progresses, so that we can just enjoy life like it used to be.
I think, I know I'm at this point, but I've reached that point where I'm almost saturated and fatigued. I don't really want to hear it anymore.
Absolutely no,
I see it all day, every day with placement. I just wasn't wanting to hear it, but I just encourage the public to try and stay as aware as they can. And I think, as you say, if we keep that in the back of our minds, it'll just help us to stay vigilant. And especially with the cases going down, like, we're doing the right sorts of things. But another problem I just wanted to mention in terms of information.
Yeah.
In this day of social media and Facebook and Twitter and all that sort of thing, there's so much misinformation out there.
Yeah.
And like, one viral tweet that contains maybe a couple of dodgy facts that aren't properly researched, that can go and get thousands of retweets before anyone sort of replies to it or calls it out. So I'd just say as well to members of the public, if whoever's watching this, just make sure you're getting your information from sources that you trust. As like me and you, we see it in the day-to-day, we see the realities of what this virus can cause.
Yeah.
A wave of disinformation. So I'd encourage people to try and just stay vigilant. And there's so much information out there, it's important to differentiate what's true and what is sort of agenda-driven bullshit. If you excuse my French, basically.
No, I agree with what you've said there. I think I couldn't have worded that better myself. I couldn't. But no, I'm glad that you've touched on that. I think it's nice because I think you painted a nice picture. We understand obviously the importance of staying vigilant. We understand the severity of COVID, and obviously understanding the importance of having your friends and society and how they can sort of impact your mental health. So if I was to ask you one last question and say to you, Jack, so what would you say yourself? In brief, you've sort of like taken from the importance of your friends and your societies and how it's worked on your mental health, because I think if people can relate and think to themselves, there's someone who faces COVID on a day-to-day basis. He's on the front lines. He understands what it's like, but he happens to do this with his friends and side, and that works for him, and it stimulates him mentally. Maybe people can relate and say, do you know what, maybe I don't have to do that every day. I have to do this, and then I can do that, and sort of just look at the positive side of the progression that they've made and how sort of like we're on the up. So yeah, what would you say that you do? Yeah.
So yeah, I think just to focus on one of the points you made there, like, I think being relatable is such an important thing. Yeah. I've been really aware of that as welfare officer this year. So we've tried to do a series on the CMFC Instagram where we've shared our own sort of mental health troubles, just to make sure that the people are aware that we all struggle, and no one's in this pandemic and lockdown situation who's
I like that a lot, yeah.
And sort of learning a new skill every day. That just realistically isn't happening. So
yeah, it's difficult. Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I would say to people is, take an hour for yourself each day. Like, we're all in these routines. Like, certain people are working, certain people are students with lots of free time. I would say just make sure for an hour a day you do something that you enjoy. So whether that's watching a Netflix documentary, whether that's going for a walk, as me and you have said, I've actually got kind of into walking. I think I'll probably pick up a pair of walking boots when the shops are open to get even more into it. But I think it's really important to take that hour even if it's just chilling, like scrolling on Twitter or whatever it might be, like you've got to take time to do things that you enjoy, because in these times of lockdown, there isn't that much to do. So it's important to take that time for yourself and remind yourself that you don't have to be productive every single second of the day, because no one's there at home like meal prepping, exercising, revising,
Absolutely, absolutely.
Like, that just isn't real life. Like everyone has their days where they aren't quite as functional as they might be, and that's life. That happens, guys. So doing your best is more than enough. And the last thing I'd like to finish on is whether you're living on your own or with your friends or whatever, with your family, make sure you're reaching out to people. It's good for you to chat about things with people you're close to, and it's good for them, because often with mental health, the hardest part is sort of that initial reach out. Like there's always that sort of stigma of kind of shame and embarrassment of sharing sort of difficulties that you go through, when in reality, everyone's got their own little difficulty that might be affecting them and getting them down. And if you share that with either your friends, your family, your welfare sec, like in our case, I'm here as a point to reach out to you if you're struggling. I think getting it off your chest and almost spreading the sort of weight of that burden can be really beneficial.
Absolutely, absolutely.
People might have those like sort of tips or advice and something that they can just give you that might help you manage that situation better. So I think it's really important to be open and honest about things if you can.
Perfect. No, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think, well, from my perspective anyway, and I think most people will probably agree, it's nice to hear someone you can relate to. It's nice to hear someone, in a similar position, and it's nice to hear the fact that, there's small things you can do to sort of just improve your day-to-day, routine, and it's not expected for you to do that every single day, because, like you said, it's just not real life. It's just, no, you can't. Who's got that time, or who's got that energy, So if you can, well done. If you can't, it's okay, because it's a work in progress, and we're just trying to work to get out of the pandemic. So thank you so much, Jack, for coming on and sort of like giving us that sort of like warm down, if you will, that nice information to sort of take home and use to sort of move forward, and the importance of our friends and societies, and also, bearing in mind that we've got to stay a little bit vigilant, because, we're close to the end. We're close to the end, and we're going to do it. So thank you so much. So, any last words to the people?
But yeah, I'd just like to say, obviously, thanks to you, Tino, for having me on, and to all the CMFC boys that might be listening. I miss you all. I miss socials. So the sooner we can get this lockdown and pandemic over, the better. But obviously, for now,
absolutely, I'm due a snake bite.
Stay vigilant. That's all I'll say.
Absolutely, awesome. Thanks so much. Thank you. That's all from Talks with Tino. Thank you guys for listening. And as always, we like to say, be kind to your mind. Bye-bye.